looking down the barrel, cannonball fire with nothing real to fight for. And I've been swinging with the tennis at a Kerouac's choir.
Hi, I'm Nicole Nighthawk, here for Australian Musician, and today I'm in a beautiful part of the world. I'm at Warburton at Project 3488 with one of my favourite local artists, Daniel Champagne. Welcome!
Good morning, thanks for having me.
Good morning, it's so nice to see you. And I was lucky enough to see your 9th show in a row, your last Melbourne show of this leg of your tour last night. It was amazing. Tell me about touring for you, because you are an artist that seems to just tour non-stop.
Yeah, I mean, ever since I finished school, I just kind of hit the road and started playing music whenever I could, wherever I could. And that started off just being around Australia at different festivals and a lot of dodgy pubs and things like that, and slowly started to get to nicer venues and going overseas. And it was sort of full scale around the world the last few years before the COVID factor hit. And so last year was very different for me. I'm very fortunate enough to now be back out doing shows in some capacity.
Yeah, so you were living over in Nashville, correct?
Yeah, for 6 years. Almost.
Right, wow. So it's really COVID that's brought you back here, and now you've got an Australian tour happening, so tell me about your tour.
Yeah, so this was kind of the tour that was planned for last year.
Right.
I was coming back from America. I fortunately played Port Fairy, which was kind of the last thing that was allowed to happen. And then I was going to go on this New Zealand tour and Australian tour. That never happened at the time, and so now it's kind of the catch-up. I mean, the gig we did last night in Warburton was sort of, I think, the 3rd postponement, and it was almost a year in the making.
Did you find that the last year, the COVID lockdown, was good in its own way because you got a different kind of engagement with fans?
Yeah, and it was important for me. I mean, as I said, I've been touring since school, and it can get full on, and I think at times I was doing it just because I didn't know what else to do or how to stop. So it was good to have a forced break that I wouldn't have taken otherwise. I was lucky enough just to be back in Australia, get to go back to my family's farm on the south coast of New South Wales and kind of chill out, think a bit about what I was doing and how I wanted to do it a bit differently in the future, write some new songs and old songs, and obviously a lot of the communication with fans came online, such as Christine, the lady we met last night.
Hi Christine, shout out to you. So when you're songwriting, what's your typical process? Because if you're on the road so much, do you dedicate time, or do you find it's just inspiration hits whenever? How does it work for you?
Yeah, I think it's a few different factors. I mean, obviously being on the road, you're constantly getting these characters and scenes from the faces and places you're seeing every day. The downside is you never really have time to sort of flesh those ideas out, but like most songwriters, keep a journal, and if I have a good idea, whether it's a title or a character or something that I feel would be a good theme for a song, I kind of write that down, and then when I do get a few days off, I sort of get to work on it. But I guess the process of actually getting the song out, to me, has always been very sort of 2 parts. One being the initial idea, and sort of that might be half a verse or a hook or you know, a chorus or something. Yes. And then eventually, I don't know if everyone's like this, but with me that kind of drains out and you've kind of got to go to work a bit more as like a craft. And
refine it, yeah. Can I ask who Josephine is? Because Josephine features in quite a few songs.
Yeah.
If it's too personal.
No, yeah. Well, it's funny because there's a few of those, and
a few Josephines.
Well, there's a few name checks in different songs.
Right.
In some cases, that name might be in 3 songs, and maybe 2 of them it's referring to a particular person, and then another time it's just a word.
Right. I did wonder. I wondered if it was like an idea of a person or an actual person.
Yeah, so it can be both, and then sometimes you're kind of taking an initial idea of a person and you're kind of using kind of artistic liberty to sort of change that or you know, flesh it out a bit more.
Yeah, cool. Now, for those of you who don't know Daniel Champagne, you need to check out his music. You have one of the most unique guitar styles that I've ever seen. How does that factor into your writing? Do you come up with, play us a little bit of what you do guitar-wise, because it's quite unique.
I'll play one of my favourite now.
So there's so much percussiveness going on there. So when you write a song, are you starting with that sometimes, or is it always just like a melody vocal idea, or how does that come about?
A bit of both. Like, I think my songs are either guitar-driven songs or kind of lyric-driven songs. So some of them are just strumming or finger picking, and more to do with the vocals and what's coming out. But I'm always into guitar beats and cool ideas, and I'm always collecting them as I am sort of titles and whatnot. And something like that, like I would have had that beat sitting around for, I think I specifically remember having the phone recording of it, and that might have been sitting around for like 2 or 3 years. And every time I'd come up with a new idea about a song, I'd kind of throw that idea across this beat and see if it fitted, kind of just like matching socks.
Yeah, right.
And most of the time that doesn't fit. The idea might work in a different sort of musical format, but eventually I found something that did fit. So yeah, often it's a lot of trial and error, but always kind of experimenting and collecting ideas that I think are interesting.
Yeah, and how did that come about? Was that just like, I need a drummer, and there isn't one, so I'll just become my own drummer?
It's funny, like when I was in high school, I was a classical guitar player.
Okay.
I grew up playing classical and sort of contemporary, just strumming my favorite songs. When I was in high school, I just started breaking away from that, wanting to write songs on the steel string guitar, and just kind of wanting to do things a little bit differently. And there were a few players that I knew of that did some of that percussive stuff. I just kind of got really interested in it and interested in trying to come up with cool guitar things that can also fit in the context of a song and sort of help it rather than hinder it, which can be hard sometimes. Sometimes you can do something really complicated that you think's really cool on the guitar, but it kind of just ruins the song when you throw it over it.
Right.
But for me, like, the percussive stuff's always been a combination of trial and error, just trying things out and experimenting and having fun, and then of course stealing tricks from my favorite players. Yeah,
right. So tell me about this guitar, because this is quite unique. You've had it specially made for you basically over a period of time. Cole Clark put something together, so tell me about the story.
This is kind of the end of the line of this idea we've had for a long time. And basically, I've been playing these guitars, Cole Clark, they're made in Melbourne, since I was 13. So I bought my first one in Canberra. And then for years I would just go back to the factory and they'd be smashed into pieces because of the style, and they'd glue it back together and I'd send it back to me. Eventually we kind of got a cool relationship going where one of the guys in the company, Carl, sort of made it his mission to make an indestructible guitar. He was quite curious about it, and so he would try all these different woods and different bracing systems and ways to put it together. And over the years they'd go out on the road and get stronger and stronger and last longer and longer. And he built this in 2015. I remember really well because we were at a trade show in Tokyo with Cole Clark, and this came over. And it's just been the only guitar I've played ever since. So it's coming up to 1,000 shows, which is really cool. And the main secret is that every bit of wood you see has 2 sheets to it. So for example, this top, underneath it, there's another top cut the same way, but the grain's going in the opposite direction, kind of like plywood. Okay. So when I used to hit them, they would kind of hairline fracture there. And then you glue it up, but there's nothing to stop it going there. And once it gets to the bridge, that sinks and it never stays in tune. So with this, when you hit it, the impact goes down and it hits this other thing that's coming across it. And
reinforcement.
Yeah, I mean, it gets touched up every now and then. Like I was in the factory the other week, but it's Well, I noticed at the end of your show, you sort of invited the audience to come back and play your guitar, try it out. And that's rare because mostly artists are like, don't touch my gear. But you're like, if I can't break it, you can't break it, which is great. The mics in this, are they like, we couldn't quite, do it justice right here acoustically, but when you were plugged in, like that sound, that percussive sound you've got, just, it hammers through the whole venue. It's amazing. So are there unique mics in this guitar particularly, or is it just the stock standard? Yeah, they're not unique to me, but they are unique to Cole Clark guitars. So every one of these that you get off the shelf will have the same pickups that I have.
So I could go home and I can start doing this, and I can become a Daniel Champagne.
Yeah, and it was pretty sort of important for me to have this guitar to learn that style and then take it on stage, because I still haven't seen any guitar that you can get it out the speakers in the same way. I'm not too good with technical, but basically they've got 3 pickups. One of them being a piezo, which most guitars have under here, that's picking up the strings that of course you need. There's a microphone shooting in there that
Yep.
kind of gets more of like that traditional, beautiful acoustic mic sound. I don't use that too much because I'm not that into like traditional acoustic sound, but the one I use a lot is what they call a faceplate, which is basically a vibration sensor that's this sort of metal strip that's attached under there.
Okay.
And that's picking up everything that's vibrating and attached to the guitar. So you can kind of turn this guitar on, put it on the floor, then walk 10 meters and tap dance, and it will come out the pickup through the speakers.
Wow, okay.
It's pretty amazing and responsive, and yeah, that's kind of their own pickup system that the company was kind of initially built around.
Right, so there's definitely a theory or a method to where you're hitting the guitar
Yeah.
in relationship to what sound you want. I notice you flick and you do all different things. Does it hurt your hands?
Not usually.
Not anymore.
There's one or two songs that I just stopped playing because they did. Mostly knuckles, like there was a few hits that were coming from too far on the left hand and hard to control the pressure. So I just put them away. But I think for the most part it looks and sounds like I'm hitting it harder than I actually am.
Right.
I mean, a lot of the really hard sounding stuff will just be like,
Yeah, and it sounds so impressive when that's plugged in and it's just
Yeah.
coming across the whole audience. It's huge. That sounds massive.
yeah, it's good fun experimenting, and every guitar will be different. So I've obviously got very used to this over the years, and it's got its own like scratch plates and different things ingrained, but I can have another Cole Clark and that will sound cool in different areas that this won't. So yeah, it's again trial and error and just working out what sounds good on your instrument.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for showing us your guitar. And please check out Daniel Champagne. You've got a new album that just came out end of last year. This is his 6th studio album, so make sure you check him out. Check out Cole Clark Guitars. And Daniel, thank you so much for your time.
All of my heart, all of my dreams, all of my stars start coming back to me. All of our past, all of these scenes, all of my stars start coming back to me. Tell me if you feel insane.